Welcome to Money Talk. I'm Cathy Yang, your intel in the Philippine markets and the economy. In the headlines, the Philippine government launches a website detailing flood control projects. A live report from the president's press conference in just a few minutes. The Agriculture Department is set to sell 20 peso per kilo rice to farmers following the suspension order on rice imports for 60 days beginning September 1st. And as U.S. tariffs bite, Philippine exporters are urged to quickly pivot to RCEP, or the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, the world's largest free trade agreement. We get more insights from Cathy Yang, full professor at the School of Economics at De La Salle University, and from Mike Ricafort of RCBC.
We have received the list from DPWH. We, I think, have put it into a form that is accessible to the public. And most importantly, it is in a form that the public can use so that they can first identify the projects, the flood control projects that are within their area, within their barangay, so that they can actually go and look at it. Or if they already have information, they can tell us about it.
That was President Bongbong Marcos moments ago. He is still speaking to the public right now in a live stream. The government has just launched moments ago a website detailing flood control projects during the Marcos administration. Some of the figures released earlier: 9,855 flood control projects from July 2022 to May 2025, amounting to 545.64 billion pesos. The regions with the most projects: NCR, Region 3, and Region 5. We'll have our mobile journalist, Julie Baisa, joining us later on in the show. The Agriculture Department will start selling rice at 20 pesos per kilo to registered rice farmers and farm workers beginning Wednesday, August 13th. Agriculture Secretary Francisco Tiu Laurel said the program aims to ease the burden on those, quote, who feed the country. This is amid criticism that selling rice for 20 pesos per kilo is only a temporary fix. The subsidized rice is currently available to marginalized and low-income households. Eligible farmers are those tilling up to 3 hectares and listed in the registry system for basic sectors in agriculture. Tiu Laurel said broader reforms such as higher taxes on imports and suspending importation are slowed by a lack of reliable data, which he said would have been available if the National Food Authority retained its regulatory role. President Marcos has suspended rice imports for 60 days starting September 1st. Our guest says the upcoming 60-day suspension of rice imports, the new U.S. tariffs, and a 2026 national budget focused on farming, infrastructure, and technology will all affect food supply and prices. With us now for more is Cathy Yang, full professor at the Carlos L. Tiu School of Economics at De La Salle University. Good to have you on, Tess. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cathy, for having me.
Okay, so you've heard there that the president has already launched a website containing all the flood control projects which go back to 2022 with a cost of at least 545 billion pesos. What do you make of the launch of this website 2 weeks after the State of the Nation address?
Well, I should say I'm happy because the administration has fulfilled its promise after 2 weeks of the SONA. And so this is what I have been saying, that there should be full transparency of projects, especially for the flood control that has been an issue now. So project scope, the costs and the procurement timelines should be put into public. And there you go. It's already there. So it shows that the administration, President Marcos, PBBM, is really serious about the accountability of his administration.
But what difference could it make with the 2026 budget now about to be submitted to Congress on August 13th?
Remember, if you recall what he said in the SONA, that after looking through all these projects, the flood control projects, if there are projects that are not really being implemented, or the design or the proposals are not supposed to be there, like he mentioned about ghost projects, then he is really going to cut those projects. I mean, the cost of that, the budget for those projects that are ghosts.
Right. Well, the 2026 budget is one of the factors, one of the moving parts. The other developments that have all taken place over a blistering last 2 weeks also include the suspension of rice imports, as well as the new U.S. tariffs, the 19% and the 100% that we have yet to know about on chips and semiconductors. Among all these drivers, what do you think would impact supply and prices of food the most?
Well, let me first clarify that the rice import suspension is only for 2 months. That is from September 1 to October 31. And this is because it's the harvest season. So that time, the country will stop bringing in imported rice to help the farmers raise their income. Especially now, or earlier this year, there was a drop of the palay price for as low as like 8 pesos per kilo. So the government is saying that we have enough rice supply, especially during that suspension time, which is for 2 months. And so locally, we are expecting a record high harvest. And so as long as there's going to be a timely release of the buffer stock, it's going to be okay. I mean, there's going to be like, there's no effect mostly on the increase in prices, because the trader said that if there's going to be import suspension, then the price of rice could go up to like 6 pesos, by 6 pesos per kilo. But then if there's timely release of the buffer stock during that time, then probably that's going to be stable. I mean, the price of rice will be stable. And what is important is we just keep our local market stable and safeguard our economy.
Right, but that's where the caveat is, the timely release of the buffer stocks. And I know that we've had long-standing logistical bottlenecks that have kept the buffer stocks from moving fast enough. So how real is the risk that retail rice prices would go up in a big way, and by up to how much at worst?
Well, as the traders have been projecting, which I think it's also kind of close to the projection, it's going to be like a 6 to 8 pesos increase, no. But then we have also this RCEF, that we can like the rice import tariffs that we have earned. I think it's around 6.6 billion, and so that can be, as I think it was mentioned by Dr. Roel Briones in your previous interview, that there should be direct cash incentives or cash aid to small farmers who owns 2 hectares or below. And so this would stabilize any changes or of the price of palay. But the important thing is that would give the import suspension would give, it's kind of a protection to the farmers, because it will give them breathing room and better prices in the short term. And that could also boost the rural incomes for as long as I said, there's going to be timely release of the buffer stock, and NFA will buy the rice at the current price. So it's at the market price, not the very low price that I mentioned earlier, which happened.
But there is the Katiwa stores that weren't there before, and it's offering 20 peso rice. And the Department of Agriculture said starting on Wednesday, it's going to give 20 peso per kilo rice for farmers, for registered farmers. So won't these be enough to help ensure that any of the maybe untimeliness, if you will, the release of buffer stocks might be able to cushion it, because there is the Kadiwa store?
Yeah, but that's only for selected Kadiwa stores. It's not for all. So there are around 700 plus Kadiwa stores all over the country, and it's only a few, maybe less than 100, who's going to participate in this, at least for this year, because it's going to be like staggered for the next couple of years. So next year it's going to be like an increase of 30% of the number of Kadiwa stores that will be selling 20 pesos kilo of rice. But remember that these are targeted. So are only for the poor families. So there are requirements and qualifications for that. So it's not for everyone yet.
As a final point before we go, let's talk about RCEP, because the Philippines is part of the RCEP trade bloc, and that includes Japan, Korea, Australia. Going to the other side of the equation, exporters. How can Philippine exporters quickly pivot to these markets to cushion the impact of the tariffs?
Okay, so let me just go step back a little bit. So this has also got to do with the tariff, the Trump tariff, right? The higher taxes
Correct.
of 90% and the Philippine exports. And I know that the electronics and semiconductors are much affected on this one. Because there's also this expectation or the plan of 100% tax on chips, no? And so the Philippines is part of the RCEP trade bloc, which opens doors to markets in Japan, Korea, and Australia, and other countries that you have mentioned. So the challenge is to quickly help the local exporters shift to these markets. So we have to diversify. It's not that the U.S. market. There are other markets, which is part of members of RCEP. So we have to speed up trade agreements and invest more on research and technology, really. On the say impact on that on food security, so we have actually there's ripple effects on that into agriculture. So remember that we are exporting some of our agricultural products. So this has to do. We can export to the RCEP countries.
Got that. Another one of those acronyms to remember from here on out. Thank you so much. Tess Tionco of De La Salle University. President Marcos believes banning online gambling will not fully address the problem, pointing instead to addiction and youth exposure as real issues. Marcos says an outright ban may not be the best fix, stressing the need for a measured response. He said the focus should be on curbing addiction and preventing the youth from being drawn to online gambling.
But in my opinion, ban will not take care of the problem. We have to be a little bit more measured in our response. What is the problem? Is the problem online gambling? Or is the problem na addict ang tao o nadadamay at natuturuan ng mga bata na magsugal? That's the problem. So let's solve that problem.
On technology, the president wants to bring India's AI and cybersecurity expertise to the Philippines. Marcos made the statement after his state visit to India, where he discussed artificial intelligence, telecommunications, and information technology. He says India's expertise can support Philippine defense, banking, and government systems.
About AI, about telecom, about IT. Magaling talaga sila dyan. World leaders sila sa ganyan. Kaya napakalaking bagay kung mapalalim natin yung discussion natin with India when it comes to those. Eventually, to bring those technologies to the Philippines.
The Philippine Stock Exchange has announced the DigiPlus Interactive Corp will join the main PSE index. In a memorandum dated August 8th, the PSE says the digital entertainment platform will be part of the 30 largest, most valuable, and most actively traded companies on the bourse. The announcement came amid calls to ban online gambling and moves to tighten rules governing the industry. DigiPlus's inclusion will replace Bloomberry Resorts Corp, with the changes taking effect on August 18th. The Securities and Exchange Commission Chair, Francis Lim, has outlined the agency's vision for stronger investor protection, streamlined processes, and a digital-ready market. The details in this report by mobile journalist Mary Reyes.
Sherfield tirelessly works to empower investors through education and champions strong corporate governance.
Firm, fair, and future-focused. This is the vision of the Securities and Exchange Commission for a transformed capital market, as shared by its newly appointed chairperson, Attorney Francis Ed Lim, in a forum organized by the Shareholders Association of the Philippines, or SharePhil, held last Friday in Makati. Attorney Lim expressed the SEC's commitment to being the guardian of investor protection, a firm yet fair enforcer of laws, and an institution that welcomes digitalization to ensure convenience and efficiency of doing business, including real-time application tracking and aging system, as well as internal audit of processes. He said all of these would be possible, especially with the cooperation of everyone concerned.
Your voice, your vigilance, and your partnership are essential. When we move in good faith in one direction, we can do more than react to change. We can shape it. And this is the promise I make to you today, that your SEC will listen, will learn, and will lead.
Issues the SEC will be looking into would include reviewing the Villar Land Holdings Corp's 1 trillion net income and valuation gains for 2024, which resulted to the Philippine Stock Exchange suspending the trading of Villar Land shares on May 16 after a property developer was not able to file its 2024 annual report.
So we're examining it, paying attention to the details before we come up with a decision one way or the other. Was there insider trading? How was their manipulation? These are technical issues.
And in line with today's locally called Age of Transparency, the SEC chairperson also promises, should there be shortcomings from the National Regulatory Agency, nobody will get away with it.
We'll make ourselves accountable. The same manner that we will make people accountable. It should be a shared commitment. We have to rally the market to realize the importance of being committed collectively to developing our capital market.
Mobile journalist Mary Monreyes, we are One News.
You're watching Money Talks, coming right up. Government treasury bonds available through an e-wallet app only until this week. And Mike Ricafort, chief economist at RCBC, joins us live in just a few minutes. Keep it here on One News. Central banks are urged to be a source of stability amid economic uncertainties. The Bank of International Settlements, or BIS, Deputy Head of Monetary and Economic Department Frank Smets, tells Business World central banks should be a stabilizing force and maintain trust in monetary policy making during highly uncertain times. This would ensure stable prices and steady inflation, says the BIS. The actions of global central banks are crucial as countries weather the impact of President Trump's tariffs. As for the Bangko Sentral Governor Eli Remolona Jr., he's already signaled the possibility of further rate cuts despite the tariff policies. The BSP previously said the levies would only bring a modest impact in the Philippines because the country is not a trading economy. The Monetary Board will meet on August 28th to determine whether to continue its year-long easing cycle. take a quick check at our own markets this Monday. The PSEI opens today a tad higher by about 0.1%, 6,340. The stock market declined last Friday by 0.4%, following President Trump's decision to levy tariffs on imported semiconductors. The broader all-shares index dipped by nearly 0.25%. As for the Philippine peso, it opens today stronger, 56.87 to the dollar. Peso weakened last Friday, returning to the 57 mark. As for the 10-year government bond yields, they've ticked up to 6.066% from the previous close of 6.042%. And the public has until August 15th to purchase government treasury bonds, now available through e-wallet app GCash. The government's 31st offering of retail treasury bonds began on August 5th, with the Bureau of Treasury's auction committee upsizing its initial offer size of 30 billion pesos. The Treasury raised 210 billion pesos during the rate-setting auction for the 5-year RTB 31 with a gross interest rate of 6% per annum. The public can place a minimum investment of 5,000 pesos through G-bonds and pay the increments of 5,000 pesos thereafter. Bangko Sentral Deputy Governor Bernadette Romulo Puyat said the number of RTB offerings reflects the Filipinos' growing interest in saving and investing to protect their wealth. The asset classes we've been monitoring closely is the local bond market. The 10-year yield now at a 7.5-month low, just above 6%. The 10-year U.S. Treasury yields hover among 3-month lows of late. With us now for more is Mike Ricafort, the Chief Economist at RCBC. Good to have you back, Mike. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Cathy interviewers. Nice to be back.
Okay, so it looks like liquidity is prevalent in the system. The 10-year yields have started coming off last week. So what is driving that to 7.5-month lows?
But first, it's the benign inflation, and also it's a global thing. As you mentioned, the 10-year Treasury yield is at 4.20 levels and among the lowest in like 3 months. And because also liquidity-wise, there would be a lot of maturity for the 5-year RTB. That's 516 billion come August 12 tomorrow. And 5 years ago, their yield was at a record low of 2.625. If they're going to invest now, the coupon is at 6% with the average auction yield of 5.94. It's more than double. And there's still another maturity by next month, by September. That's a total of 288 billion. So fundamentally, it would increase the liquidity into the financial system, and they'll be looking for a new outlet, a new home, and at a much higher yield, more than double, and they'll be happy with that. Cathy.
Mike, where's all the demand coming from for these RTBs, the retail treasury bonds?
Well, essentially, Cathy, it's from all types of investors up to the retail level, from the institutional ones, both local and foreign, as well as, these are long-term bonds also. Especially the fund managers who can afford to have these kinds of long-term investments locked in. And the timing is kind of favorable because the yields are still near cycle highs at above 6%. And the fair value of that, if you look at even the averages relative to, say, the U.S. yields relative to inflation and the BSP rate, fair value is around 5%. So there's a downside of almost 100 basis points from a trading perspective. And, the unique thing about fixed income is that, the investors could lock in the yields, whether institutional fund managers, high net worth individuals, even retail investors, they just hold on to it until it matures, and they would kind of somewhat eliminate the market risk, okay? And enjoy the relatively high yield to maturity of close to 6%.
Well, let's take a look at the other metrics here. We've had lower than forecast CPI print. Let's pull up that chart right now. Inflation now hovering at near 6-year lows just before COVID. That's the black line there. When you superimpose that with the local policy rate hovering at 5.25, that's the blue line, you'll see that the gap between inflation and the policy rate continues to widen, now below target for 5 straight months. So what does that tell you now about the Bangko Sentral? Does it have a lot more catching up to do, cutting rates in the back half of this year?
Yeah, yes, Kathy. Actually, they have all the leeway. That well, the only thing that's constraining the future rate cuts locally would be the Fed rates because of the healthy interest rate differential that must be maintained. Currently, it's already at the record low at 75 basis points. Well, the BSP rate at 5.25, the Fed rate at 4.5%, and this is our biggest story. I mean, the benign inflation environment, even in the U.S. The odds have increased already that by the next Fed meeting by September 17, a possible quarter point cut by then, and on the next BSP rate setting meeting, as signaled also by some of our local monetary authorities for the past month or two, as early as August 28th, possible quarter point cut. So that would bring the interest differential to the tightest on record, 50 basis points, but it would normalize because the Fed would also cut by September 17. So it would be back to 75 basis points. And for the rest of the year, towards the end of the year, there would be another quarter point cut by the Fed. That's based on the Fed futures of pricing in 57 basis points cut, and the Fed dot plot. Official estimates of the Fed officials, total of 50 basis points cut this year, and the BSP would also match that. So there would be additional 50 basis points cut by the BSP. So yeah, it's a really matter of managing this interest differential, and well, just like any other central bank in the world, but going beyond by 2026, 2027, the Fed dot plot is pricing in another 25 basis points cut by 2026, another 25 basis points cut by 2027. So the BSP has all the leeway to match this, and of course signals also of a further cut in reserve requirement ratio by next year.
All right, we'll keep tabs of that. A lot of rate cutting there, potentially really lower rates ahead. Thank you so much, Mike Ricafort of RCBC. And our top story this morning, President Bongbong Marcos unveils key findings in his administration's review of flood control projects. Let's get details now from our mobile journalist who just covered the press conference, Julie Baiza, reporting live from Malacanang. So what else did the president say, Julie?
Good morning, Cathy. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. launched the sumbongsapangulo.ph. Dito pwedeng hanapin ng public yung name ng kanilang barangay o yung lugar para makita yung flood control projects in their places. They can also report the current status. Ang sabi ng Pangulo, kung maganda ba, hindi maganda, or kung ano ang problema. The President also mentioned that more than 9,800 flood control project cost 545.64 billion pesos. But he said there are some problems or lapses. 6,021 of these projects do not specify the exact type, and several projects have exactly the same contract cost. Sabi ng Pangulo, nanggaling siya sa local government at imposible daw na mangyari yun. It is impossible to have the exact same amount, same contractor. That's why it is a significant report already. The President also reported that most projects are in Bulacan, Cebu, Isabela, Pangasinan, Pampanga, Leyte, Tarlac, Iloilo, and it doesn't necessarily match doon sa flood-prone provinces in their list. He also said na yung buong proseso ay kailangang i-publicize katulad nga ng ipinangako niya sa kanyang nagdaang SONA. The President also said na welcome naman daw yung proposal ni Mr. Ramon Ang na tumulong sa gobyerno para masugpo yung problema sa baha. Kaya lang ang problema, kailangan din daw nating solusyonan yung garbage o yung problema sa garbage collection ng mga LGUs. Kaya pag-aaralan pa daw yan. Yung sinabi din ni Senator Panfilo Lacson na mag-tap ng other billionaires, welcome din daw yan sa Pangulo. Kahit sino daw na handang tumulong, tatanggapin nila. Kailangan lang daw magkaroon ng close coordination. Hindi naman pinangalanan ng Pangulo kung merong or pinatotohanan kung meron nga mga undersecretary or other officials ng DPWH na nasibak. Ang sabi niya, kaka-open lang daw ng website and kailangan nila ng tulong ng public para makonsolidate yung mga report. Aside from the flood control issue, nagsalita rin ng Pangulo doon sa recent development sa Baho de Masinloc. Ang sabi ng Pangulo, hindi daw niya alam yung sinasabi na we are playing with fire. Nagsasabi lang naman daw siya ng totoo tungkol sa pangyayari sa West Philippine Sea. Binigyan din ng Pangulo na we do not want to go to war, but if there will be war in Taiwan, definitely madadrag daw dyan ng Pilipinas, kaya kailangan daw natin yung paghandaan. So, yan muna yung mga update mula dito sa Malacanang. Cathy?
Okay, maraming salamat. Julie Baisa, our mobile journalist covering the presser there in Malacanang just about an hour ago. Before we go, the Manila season of Les Miserables, the World Tour Spectacular, has just been extended. Cameron McIntosh's production of Bull Bill and Schoenberg's Les Miserables, the World Tour Spectacular officially gets its final extension until March 1st of next year. It was originally set to run from January 20th to February 15th, 2026 at the theater at Soler. New and final show dates have been released and are now available on Ticket World. That is it for Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. Catch us again tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. here on One News. Have a great day ahead.